utilities and energy industries. This is a panel discussion. So first up, I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, talk about how they became in records management, and a little bit about their companies and the role that they have. So first, let's introduce Ashley McKay at Valero.
Hi, thank you, Amanda. Hi, I'm Ashley McKay. I am, as said, at Valero Energy Corporation. We are North America's largest independent petroleum refiner and probably soon to be largest manufacturer of biodiesel and sustainable aviation fuel. I fell into records management in around, I want to say 2007. I've been an information professional since 1998. After I got my MLIS, I worked in a few libraries here and there, and then ended up in records management because I wanted to be able to afford a washer and dryer by the time I was 40. I've been at Valero since 2007, so it's going on 18 years now, and currently I am the Senior Records Compliance Specialist here in our department. I focus mainly on electronic records and the care and feeding of our records retention schedule. I'm also the lead Part 6 writer for the Certified Records Management for the CRM designation, the CRM exam. So any of you who are candidates for the CRM exam and the Part 6 and all, I make no apologies. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And next up, we have Kelly Murphy from Trinity River Water Authority.
Hi, I'm Kelly Murphy. I'm the records administrator here at Trinity River Authority of Texas. We are primarily water and wastewater treatment plants, and we also operate a campground and a dam on Lake Livingston. I have been at my role for almost 3 years now, and this position is fairly new. It's only been around for 4 years. So we're very much at our infancy stage of really developing out a records management program. I fell into records management kind of like Ashley. Actually, I was a MLS student at UNT with an emphasis on archives, and my undergraduate degree was environmental studies, so water was a great combination. So, and like Ashley, you have to have a paycheck. So, records was the way to go. But I absolutely love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. And lastly, we have Sherry McManus from Doc2 eFile.
Amanda, I'm the founder of Doc2 eFile. We are a document conversion primarily document conversion company, founded in 1999. Prior to that, I had 6 years working for other companies doing document conversion and selling systems for records management. At that time, I was a CRM and a CDIA, certified document imaging architect. Have spent many, many years. I've been in business now at Doc2, 26 years, assisting our clients, a large sector of which are public utilities, pipeline companies, water companies. Valero happens to be one of our clients. Our real focus is helping folks have access to images, data, documents to run their businesses. So I've been involved in quite a few taxonomy creations. I've been involved in RIM policy and procedures, and I've been involved with ARMA for more decades than I want to admit. So hopefully I can bring something to the table today from all those years of experience that will help some of you folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry. And lastly, you have me, Amanda Rody, Innovative Development. We create repeatable, reliable, defensible, legal and records management solutions for your organization. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items that I will need to go over. You can enter your questions in your chat. Our panelists are willing to answer questions during the presentation. So if you have something that's on topic, please enter in the chat and we will try to get to it. If we run out of time at the end and we can't answer your questions, we will follow up with you about them. And lastly, there is a raffle at the end from VRC. You must be present to win. So if you want to be entered for that raffle, please stay on and we will do that at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and we can get started. So our first question for our panelists. What advice do you have for RIM professionals within utilities and energy that are looking to gain stakeholder support for modernization on project initiatives? Many utilities operate in multiple locations. How does this add to the complexity of stakeholder buy-in? Kelly, do you want to take it first?
Sure. So, yeah, we have, like a lot of you, are going to have multiple locations. So we have, I guess, about 13 locations spread out over the river basin. So that's 400 miles. And for stakeholder buy-in, a lot of times we hear the presentations talk about executive management buy-in, and that we had before this position was created. So I don't have to convince anybody at the top the importance of this. Being in Texas and following the guidelines that we have, we know the laws, we know why they're important. So the buy-in that we really needed was more at the plant level. The office coordinators are our records liaisons, the plant managers understanding the importance. So for me, what has worked, and the privilege to be able to do this, is to go out at the individual sites and really take a hands-on approach and help people. So that has been the best way for me to get buy-in, is getting to know the individuals that are really responsible for their records, understand their processes, and how they work, what their questions are, what their concerns, their fears, and really try to meet them where they are and let them know that, they can ask questions and be approachable. Ashley?
Yeah, so I'm in a slightly different situation than you, Kelly, in that we have 15 refineries. What are we up to? 12 ethanol plants, 3 biodiesel sites, and we operate in, I believe, 5 different countries: the United States, Canada, UK, Peru, and Mexico. So it's difficult for us, of course, to get, I would say almost impossible to actually get physically out to the sites and such. And there is sometimes some language issues. What I have done, I agree with you very much about having executive support is valuable, but getting that middle layer of management and other respected authorities throughout that middle layer, where they're close enough to the work to understand how it works, and yet high enough in the management chain that they have influence and authority that can help. So in the event that I'm not able to get out to a site to secure their assistance with the project, to secure their buy-in, here at headquarters, we loop in the people the people under the big specific business areas. Like, for instance, if we're looking at pipeline integrity, we go to our pipeline compliance group, and I've made friends with them and get their buy-in. And since they are sort of the trusted individuals, once I have their buy-in, I ask them, hey, can you introduce me to the team? Can you coordinate with them? I sort of get that additional support by engaging someone that they already know.
That's a great point, Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just a brief note of some of the experiences that I've had over the years. Sometimes I feel like the communication of the RIM policies is at a different level than the language that the actual users speak. And it's great if you can kind of involve them in the very beginning, so that when you talk to them, they understand what you're talking about and why. One of the things that I have provided to my utility and pipeline customers are case examples of what happens and how big the fines are when you don't follow policy. It's no fun to have to police a policy, but sometimes if you let folks know what the repercussions are, if you don't follow the policy, you'll get that buy-in a lot quicker. That's about all I wanted to add. I've just seen too many of those instances.
Great, thank you so much. Next question for our panelists. Utilities and energy industries are impacted by natural disasters more than any other industry. How does this affect your modernization and project planning within records management? Would you like to start, Ashley? You're smiling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just thinking back to, we have a number of refineries on the Gulf Coast here in Texas. And I'm thinking back to when Hurricane Rita blew through. We had refineries in the Houston, the Texas City, and the Port Arthur area, which ended up being where the hurricane made landfall, hit direct onto Beaumont. So we had packed up a lot of our paper records at the refineries and moved them inland about, 100, 150 50, maybe 120 miles inland to Jasper, Texas. And unfortunately, that was right inside the hurricane path. Jasper got a direct hit as well. We were fortunate; nothing was damaged paper-wise. We recovered from that, no problem. But it certainly did show that our current plan of just moving enough inland and all that was not sufficient at all. We really should have gotten a lot farther. So that was sort of the impetus when we realized how vulnerable those paper records were to start up a digitization project for these engineering drawings, for these long-term high value irreplaceable, some of these historical documents. So that that near miss there kind of kickstarted the we should do something about this sort of spirit. So unfortunately, you much in this industry, you can't let a good crisis go to waste. We got lucky and we responded. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you so much. Kelly, Sherry, do either of you have anything you'd like to add to this?
I would say Ashley has a good point about the physical records. I've had a similar question about our some of our digital records that are stored. A lot of stuff now is moving to cloud, but the things that we have on our servers, our backup servers are 11, 12 miles away from here. And that seems like, we're more inland, so we're not hitting a hurricane up here. But with the winter storm a couple of years ago, the power went out everywhere, not just so it seems like 12 miles might be far enough in a lot of cases, or in your case 100 miles might sound like it's far enough, but I do wonder about those things as well. My recommendation, kind of in related to the first question, is getting to know the decision makers and really working with different departments. So my role is in the risk management department. So getting to know your risk team, your risk manager, how emergency planning is going, how disaster planning is going, that business continuity plan, those kind of things, and where you fit in on the insurance policies, and just getting to know your IT department and their processes, and just making sure that sometimes the records department's overlooked. So make sure you're known, and hey, make sure I'm part of each one of these plans and processes that you're making, so that we're more prepared going into the future.
Great point, Kelly. And I wanted to follow up with Sherry, since Sherry, you deal more with the physical records. So let's say kind of what Ashley was saying, how they moved it inland, it wasn't enough. So let's say what happens when you don't move things inland and documents get destroyed. How can organizations create a plan for waterproofing their physical documents? How should these natural disasters really influence their records management policies?
For the years, I don't think that in the 26 years we've been in business, I don't think there's been a single year where we didn't have a damaged document recovery project. New Orleans, Florida, Houston, Louisiana, Sandy, when Sandy hit up north, we were working with several utility companies up there. And one of the things that I've found, guys, is nobody seems to have a good inventory. At some point, you are going to have to say those records were damaged and damaged beyond salvation, or whatever the case is. If you don't have a good inventory, you don't know what you lost. You don't know, what to report. And when somebody starts looking for that record, and let's say it's maybe a decade later, and they say, well, where are the drawings for the XYZ system? Oh, somebody hopefully is still around that will remember those got damaged in this storm, that storm, hurricane, fire, whatever. So I would say everybody really needs to have a good grip on, if you're maintaining, and a lot of our clients maintain digital and backups of digital, but they also have that original hard copy, and that's part of their policy. But having a great inventory of that, so that you know what you have and what you lost, and documenting that for the future generations of records managers and risk team and so forth, is so valuable. And I just want to go back to Kelly's point. There are so many times when we have gone in to help clients recover after a storm, and they review their insurance policy, and there's not one single clause in there that provides for recovering those records or the cost associated with moving the records or anything that they have to do. So I would advise everybody, take a look at your policy, get your risk team, your legal team, look at that policy, make sure you've got something in there.
I'd also like to add on to that. Good, very good thought about the insurance policies, because I'm pretty sure there are a few of us who have actually considered, recovery, does cost money. To your point about the inventory, so certainly we're all familiar with paper inventories, and being that RIM is usually at least the custodian of the paper records and all, but we overlook having an inventory of your electronic assets as well. Most likely your IT department will have that inventory simply because they're the ones supporting it. And if you're a large enough organization where you're using a ticket system to track requests and break fixes and all of that, the ticket system should have an asset inventory, so all of the software and who's responsible for it. But if you can go one step further and at least have some kind of a timeline or an inventory of what years of records and record types are contained within that system, then at least for RIM purposes, recovering from a disaster will be a little bit easier, at least being able to, outline a history of any particular record type in the event that, you get a subpoena or you have to put a legal hold on it, and understanding the history of those records and what moved from what system or server to another. So, definitely looping in your IT to help you understand and inventory, your electronic assets and records as well. Consider that.
Just want to add something, Ashley, that you made me think about. One of the instances that came up for us not too far in the past was an opportunity where we had an inventory and we documented with this client that those records were destroyed. However, only a year later, we got a project with that same company to work with another department's records. And lo and behold, a copy of those records we had said were destroyed were actually kept at another location. They were all copies. They were not the originals. The originals did get destroyed, but it really kind of caused a bugaboo. We had all these meetings around this, like who all has copies of what. Ugh. And sadly, the records coordinators didn't talk with one another. They do now. We have an annual meeting where we all get together and we all talk. And this is a big utility company. But it was kind of a blessing, but also kind of a heads up, wow, we didn't even realize you guys kept that. So just note that inventory.
All right.
Can I go grab a coffee? Do you want?
I've got a whole thing here, but thank you.
I'm on mute. Could everyone please make sure you're on mute? So I do not hear you. Well, thank you so much, Ashley and Sherry. You kind of segue into some of the regulatory questions we have coming up next. So, how does RIM best support the company during the rapidly changing regulatory environment? In other words, how does RIM help the company remain in compliance when the requirements for compliance are always changing?
Oh, yeah, that's quite the challenge, isn't it? To me, it comes down to two things. The authorities of your program is the first one. Not necessarily, how much influence your program has, but what is the foundation for your program? So we're talking about, obviously, for records, for retention, you're talking about your regulations, both state and federal, international, if you happen to be there. Having those well documented, having those accessible, and having those understood. We're talking about whatever like ISO standards or ANSI standards or even specific industry standards, understanding that how records management is mentioned in those standards and being able to document where that is present in your program. For those in the highly and those of us that are in the highly litigious environment, then there's the Sedona conference as well. A lot of standards and expectations come out of that, but finding these bodies of work, the EDRM, IG models, all of these things that the thought leaders in our industry and our the RIM profession have put together to say this is the foundation of a good records program. So having all of those in alignment, having all of those documented and so that you can point to your program and say, I'm not just making this up. I'm not throwing a dart at the wall to pick retention, or or making up citations, what I think is the best thing. No, this is a program based on good sound practices that have been vetted over the years. So, and that leads into the second part. Trust me, this has a point. It leads into the second part. You have your authorities, but then you also document your program, document your citations. Keep copies in accordance with your retention schedule of your old policies to show over time that you have a formal, established program with defensible procedures that you repeat over and over and over, because consistency is king in this industry. And what those two things will do between your authorities and good documentation, it will show that even if a regulation has changed or a new one has been introduced or some other sort of change has happened, that you have a history, you have reliability, that you have a program that is in compliance and takes into account all of these changes, so that even if you miss one or you're in the process of trying to incorporate it, you have a good, solid, trustworthy foundation. I think of an example in the real world. I had a friend of mine, this was back in the days when you carried paper copies of your insurance policy in your car, so that when you got pulled over because you were speeding, they say, license and insurance, you show them your insurance paper. He got pulled over and the cop asked for his insurance, and he pulled out a stack of every insurance policy he had for like the past 15 years. And he started going through them. And he's like, I can't find the most recent one, but here's, 10 years ago, 10 and a half years, and started going through this huge stack. And the cop said to him, look, clearly you maintain your insurance. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to write you up for that ticket. So similar thing, you have a program which is defensible, which is based on sound established principles, and you can demonstrate through your documentation that you have followed these things and taken them to account, that when regulations change, you have built up a good enough reputation that you will be able to take time to incorporate those changes and not feel like you are constantly behind the 8 ball and have an indefensible program.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Kelly or Sherry, would you guys like to add anything? Or I have a follow-up question for Ashley, actually along the same lines. We're going to skip ahead to that one because you kind of gone into this one. So given the decentralized nature of utilities and energy sectors and the frequency of mergers and acquisitions, you guys are adding states, you're adding countries, we hear that. How does your organization integrate record retention schedules and data into a unified program? So how do you make sure these new companies that you're acquiring are following, the retention schedules, but also are in compliance with the changing regulatory environment? Sorry, I'm throwing that right back at you, Ashley, but.
Okay. Oh boy, M&As are fun. You have to make friends with your legal department, and you have to be willing to get on the phone with people you may have never met before and introduce yourself, and identify the lawyers at the new site, at the new in the new jurisdiction or something like that. It does come down to collaboration, because for the most part, I think most of the people on this call, we're not attorneys, we don't play them on TV, but we certainly have to take those sorts of things into account. So making friends with the legal group, or again, the risk assessment, like Kelly, in your case, you're embedded within them. That's helpful too. But finding that inroads so that you can learn what the requirements are in your new area and understand how is that going to affect your retention schedule. Maybe if you're fortunate, you've just acquired a new site, but it's in the same jurisdictions. Great. Now it's just a matter of extending your program out to the new site and getting them all in compliance. But if it is going into somewhere entirely new, that will take longer, and it takes a lot of research to make certain that the regulations from that new jurisdiction are incorporated into your retention schedule, and do you create the question becomes, do you create a change in the overall, just a global retention period, or is the document high enough risk that you want to actually make a country exception, a country deviation within the retention schedule, whereas the majority of the company keeps this record for 15 years, say, but in this particular state, we have to keep it for 20. And you have it, but you have to document the reason. Why didn't you just pick 20 for the whole for the whole area? Why are you calling out a specific deviation? So again, it comes back to that documentation. It comes back to a ton of research, which maybe you are not, if you're a party of one, if you're a department of one, you don't have the bandwidth for, so find out who does. It's one of the reasons for retention schedule specifically, I do enjoy having the support of a retention schedule management software that I can pick up the phone and get someone on the phone from the vendor to say, help me with this research. Can we start up a project, that sort of thing. But of course, these things cost money. So may not necessarily be, you may not necessarily have that in your budget. So it's a matter of figuring out how are you going to get assistance doing this research and incorporating it.
Great, thank you so much. Ashley, sure you guys have anything to add, or we'll move on to AI, which is what everyone wants to talk about, I'm sure.
I was going to say, if I could add one
course.
thing, because Ashley's is so global for to speak to the people that have a little bit more local, because we're not dealing with this, to that expanse that she is. Everything that we plants that we might acquire or customers that we might acquire or lose will all be in the same state. But so a much smaller version, though, is just the siloed programs that existed before you have a very strong centralized records management program, or in our case, a centralized risk management program. So it seems much more small scale, but it's still kind of the same thing where we have different locations calling different records different things, so just that centralizing, even on a small scale, to make sure, the ones in the labs, the biologists, the chemists, the scientists, they all know what, who they answer to. They know exactly what their regulations are, and their paperwork is definitely in order because they get audited more often. So, but for everybody as a whole, how they're using those records might vary from plant to plant. How they previously maintained them and what their retention was might vary from plant to plant. So having a strong, centralized, we don't really have a centralized repository, but just a centralized attitude so that we can have some collaboration between the projects has been, a big help making inroads toward all of us operating without as much of a siloed situation.
Great, thank you.
If I can just add
course.
briefly, Amanda, to that.
Yep.
A big part of our business at Dr. EFAW is mergers and acquisitions and helping people migrate from one system to another for digital records, and then also bringing in those paper documents or anything that's been microfilmed or so forth. And one of the things that I see consistently is exactly what Kelly was talking about. We don't call it that here. We call it this. And so we've got to do some data normalization and get it in. But there's also a training so that now when they look at the new system, where's this? They're lost for a while because it's not their same language that they've been speaking. But we take it a step beyond that and we do something we call a gap analysis. If the system should have had this type of record and those don't exist, where are they? What did they call those? We've got to find them. So a big part of how we assist is we're going in saying you should have this, and this for that system, but we only have these three things. We've got to unearth that fourth thing. And I think that gets missed a lot of times, and it causes so much havoc at the end of the day. One of the projects that comes to mind immediately is a company filed certain documents together as one. They didn't separate them. And when we were looking for those in the gap analysis, we ended up finding out that's what they did. And we were able to separate those so that they were filed in the right retention buckets, if you will. But in their world, they just didn't do it that way. It wasn't even a line item in their retention schedule. So just making sure at the end of the day, you know what you have and what you don't have.
I remember oh my goodness, I'm thinking at least a decade ago there, ARMA used to have a publication about, managing mergers and acquisitions. It was like a checklist or something like that. I haven't seen it in a long time, but maybe that's still out there. Maybe it's been updated, but I remember seeing that and going, ooh, yeah, that's a good document to have. So
Mhm.
maybe somebody go check the ARMA website and see if that's is still available or if it's been updated, or if not, that might be a good project for someone at ARMA to take on.
And Gartner did something as well, Ashley, I
Okay.
think.
Okay, good. Because yeah, M&As or any kind of new purchase, new asset being brought online and everything can be extremely tricky for all of those reasons Kelly and Sherry you mentioned, So yeah, they're tricky.
Great, thank you, women, so much. So next we have, how do you see AI impacting RIM within the utilities and energy industries?
Oof.
It's coming whether we like it or not, right? We have to, we know it is. Kelly, do you want to start? Ashley?
Sure, I can start. I mean, obviously, that's the hot topic right now, and we are all moving that direction. And I think that we always have to remember to separate the unknown, I guess, generative AI, which is still very much in development, and the AI tools that we all currently use to help automate some of our processes. So, when you get a question like, do you use AI? Yes, we're all using AI in some kind of machine learning kind of fashion. Um, and so, you know, our organization was quick um, to be very scared, I guess, of AI to start with, especially the generative AI. They have since, in the last year, backed off of that a little bit and now have said, more proceed with caution. We are getting a lot of questions about even these, when you record the video and the automatic transcript, the read AI that the team sends. Oh no, is that a record? What do we do with it? So you have to go into this with an open mind because the future is coming. And so, being informed as much as possible and but proceeding cautiously, I think, is the direction that we're heading, at least.
Yeah, I don't think there's any getting away. And I heard someone say AI will not replace your job, but you will be replaced by someone who understands how to use
Right.
AI. So yeah, that's charming. That's
Right.
great. I do see an opportunity because yeah, like Kelly, like us, same as Kelly, we looked at generative AI and it's just not there, and the return on the investment and everything, it just doesn't seem worth it at this point. But what I see is, again, AI tools being used for very transactional business processes and things like that, predictions and forecasting and all. And what I see is a good opportunity for records management to be involved in the very beginning of AI adoption, because, as we all know, AI runs off of data. If you have bad data, you have a bad AI. And I want to say, I believe it was Gartner released a study that, like, I don't know, what was it, 40% of all AI projects fail. And 80% of the reason those 40% failed was because they started off with bad data, outdated data, unnormalized, and it just completely cratered the project. So here's our opportunity here in RIM to demonstrate our value, because we deal with cleaning up data, normalizing it, disposing of it, making it reliable and with integrity. That is our specialty. That is what our profession does. And I think we have an opportunity to really demonstrate value, even though we're not AI coders or data scientists and all, but we can be in from the very beginning and say, look, if you want a good AI tool, let me help you clean up this data. Let me help you make certain that it is still relevant and presented well, so that we get the most out of our investment in this. As far as AI and records management specifically, I see a lot of possibility in classification, and hopefully everybody's favorite file share cleanup, rot cleanup, that sort of thing. But again, that's I see that a lot of management, facetiously or not, they're like, well, we'll just throw AI at it and that'll help clean us up. And I want to say, yes, but there's still a lot of work to be done at the, at the outset to make certain that we're getting quality out of that. So that's where I feel AI and RIMS will be intersecting in the, in the not so distant future.
Mhm.
I think part of it is a kind of a learning curve too. So like you said about a cleanup, a file cleanup. So we're doing that right now. We're scanning our shared drives and are doing a file cleanup. And the vendor asked, do you want us to set the default permissions as delete? And I went, oh, no. We need to set which they were probably right. Because as I'm looking through the scan, the majority of it is delete. I was like, no, we have to change our culture a little bit first. So I have to do the default is keep and let me do this first round very manually as we clean it up. So when people see the rot that is in the system, then they'll understand that moving forward, they'll be more comfortable to do those automated processes. So I think again, it's you had mentioned just being on the forefront, like being invited to learning about the new software, the new processes, being friends with IT is very helpful. Because I was really excited when they're coming to me now and asking questions before we have new software. Like make sure records is involved on that. As we do these new processes, it's this balance between jumping forward into the future and the automation that is available and but also catering to everybody's own hesitancies. So yeah, moving forward with some balance is, I think, the best way to do that.
I'll chime in because we use so many different AI tools every single day. Originally, I was super skeptical about it, which is why we have something, and that was a great segue for this, Kelly. We have something in our processes called Human in the Loop. And we have different thresholds set for competency for the different data sets that are pulled. And all of them have a human in the loop that's reviewing to make sure we have that accuracy. Use it for a lot of classification. We use it for data scraping. Coincidentally, I've built a tool to help me respond to RFPs because most of what we do is pretty much repeatable, if you will. We use it for marketing. We use it for all kinds of stuff. And I have access, thankfully, to a lot of AI engineers that can create different scenarios for us. We work with a lot of schematics and diagrams at the utility companies and pipelines. Not all of that stuff is left to right. So OCR doesn't work that great, but AI can help with things that are written on a diagonal, things that are handwritten. The tools, and I started before COVID using AI. And the tools that I have these days are phenomenal. It's amazing how accurate you can get them to be, but it doesn't start out that way. It's that human in the loop that gets them to that point. I agree so much when you said, Ashley, that at some point we may be replaced by someone who isn't afraid of this, that gets it. And so if you can get a hold of somebody who can explain to you how the particular tool you're looking at really works, it sure helps your confidence level. And there's some that I'm not confident at all because I've bothered to find out how they work. But the tools that we use daily, I've embraced. And I think we're all going to have to at some point, sadly.
Oh, Ashley, are you trying to say something? You're on mute.
Yes, I am. No,
There
it's
you
just, it is just the next big evolution in, in this whole, information culture that we find ourselves in. Is that, internet was the last big jump, and now we've got this that, has the potential to really affect business and our, in our personal lives. And also, again, it's just, it is coming, and the more you get comfortable with it, or at least willing to consider it and all, and still be critical about it, because certainly, yeah, it's not there yet, and it's a brave company, I think, that is the first one to adopt a new technology like this. So it's not going to solve every problem, but I bet it can solve a number of them. So
I just wanted to throw in really quickly, Amanda. I don't know how many utility companies have to make records accessible to visually or hearing impaired folks. AI is taking that by storm. If you think about like EOBs and bank statements, or even, the utility bills and things like that, there are tools out there for that have really come a long way. So that segment of it, that interaction with your consumers, that's coming as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing to hear that they're able to do that and provide that ADA accommodation so they're able to understand it. Kelly, do you have anything else you want to add on AI? If not, we will head over to our
Nope.
chat. We have a couple questions. So this one is for Ashley. Do you have or have you had at Valero a records coordinator program or something similar?
Okay, we had a records coordinator network. Oh my goodness, several years back when we were far more invested in the paper half of the business, when more things were created and generated and managed in paper. We had a fairly formal network, which over the years, we have to say, has honestly diminished quite a bit as more and more processes became digital and more records became born digital and stayed that way. It has really shrunk down to the handful of groups that still maintain paper and want to send things off site. And so it's become less of a network as much as it is just become, these are the people we talk to in various departments to help them manage their paper records. So truthfully, I don't really have a formal coordinator network, but what I do have, and this is this is valuable. It calls back to that first question we had about, about stakeholders and all. I do have what I call them my best friends, but really they are the subject matter experts, that middle layer of management in it throughout the business department, because one of the things we realized that we were missing so much is, in records, we manage records, we categorize them, we do all of these things, but I don't create them. And since I don't create them, I don't necessarily always understand the business processes around the records creation and the significance of those records and how they're used. So when we were doing a retention schedule update project, we realized we need a group of people that we can go to and say, what is this? What is this document? Why do we need it? Who uses it? How's it created? Tell me the business around this thing. And so that's where we took a look at the highest levels of our organization, took a step or two down to senior managers, directors, things like that again, they understood the business, but they had enough authority to make decisions on retention, but they certainly could tell us all of these why questions and the what is it and why is it important. So that actually has been just as valuable as having records coordinators, as having someone in that level of business that can help us understand all these things. I mean, energy, petroleum refining is complex, utilities is complex, and all these different moving parts and business. We can't be expected to know all of these things. We just need to know the people who know how it's done.
That's a great point. Thank you, Ashley. We do have another question for all of you, anyone who wants to jump in. What are the biggest obstacles the utility energy industry faces when modernizing their RIM systems? Is it budget constraints, aging infrastructure, or staff resistance? And how do you address and drive the successful adoption when you get there?
I think for us, it might have been staff resistance, and it's not intentional resistance. I think it's just, again, that siloed system, and people just used to having to do everything themselves and then get stuck in your ways because of that. We've had some excellent people that have worked here. That is not a criticism. That is actually a compliment to all of the diverse activities they've had to do. But when our plants have kind of operated independently, they did everything themselves. The safety programs, they're their own HR, they're their own IT. So when you start coming in from the outside, if you start coming in like the compliance police, you really do scare them off. So we have come in with a very collaborative approach, really come in to calm things down. So that has been a big thing for me to get in and in order to overcome their concerns. Also, again, I'm not coming in, I'm not the compliance police. I'm not forcing you to throw everything away. If you think this is important, I have an archivist heart. So if you think it's important and it has research value, just put a label on it so I can find it later. And I'm happy to save your cool stuff because I like the cool stuff too. So we've found different ways to approach people. We have found, we actually found some old film reels from a promotional project that was done about 40 years ago. And so I had the films digitized. I bought a popcorn machine and I went out to each of the water plants and gave them a history lesson of, you know, and so that was okay. So now I'm a regular person that's interested in what you're doing. I am not just here to force, you know, the government's rules on you. So just however we can to make those inroads has been such a helpful process to make it fun, to make it personal, because really it's not always fun. It's sometimes very tedious. But in order, you know, for them to know that we care about the processes that they're doing. So that has been for us our big progress in overcoming some of those hesitancies.
Well, you're building trust with them. And who doesn't
Right.
want to have, like, you know, you're coming out there like, listen, let's just watch something and, you know, have some popcorn. So it's building that trust. And once you get the trust, people start listening to you and understanding and opening that door.
Yeah, I would
to. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, okay. I would just say that, yeah, honestly, budget is one of the least concerns. Either it's there or it's not, you know, and aging infrastructure, that's, you know, I'll say that, you know, that's someone else's department. So it really is, you know, the resistance to change and the and just that change management and the people element. I like to joke that if I knew how much I'd have to deal with people when I went into information, you know, the information professional, I would have become an actuary instead or something, because if you don't have those, you know, they call it emotional intelligence now, but those communication skill, those soft skills, Kelly, your idea of, you know, taking something important to them, digitizing, and then sharing it back, showing that you value it. If you don't have the ability to make that kind of connection and understand, you know, a different perspective and all, I don't think you're going to have a very successful program, because in the end, it is information, but it's people that create and use that information, and they're the ones that you have to win over. I'm not an archivist. I don't have an archivist heart, but I do come in and say, hey, I'm here to, you know, I maybe I come in as a little bit of a mom figure, because it's like, look, you got a really dirty room here, guys. Let me help you clean it up so you can find where the good stuff is. Let me help you. I will be the one to say it's okay to throw that away. I find a lot of people are so resistant and so scared that it's going to be their name on the approval that said destroy these things. And I said, no, it's not your name. It's not, it's mine. It's mine. And so when you agree to this records retention schedule, you've taken yourself out of the equation. You've approved the retention on this. 7 years, it's gone. I'm here to come in and say, I'll take that from here. Thank you so much. It's lived out its life, and there's no business reason, there's no legal reason to hold on to this. I'll take care of that. So, you know, finding what resonates with people, you know, whether it's an appreciation of the history of a place and an appreciation for the activity that goes on there, and you just wanting to keep things clean so that they can do their jobs and not be drowning in data. You know, it's finding that, it's finding what resonates and being able to work with that. But yeah, it's the people. They'll get you every time.
I like what you said about being the mom. You know, when I'm describing my job to people that have no idea what it is we do, I compare it as, you know, if your garage is a mess, like you said, your room's a mess. Okay, if I tell you to go in and clean your garage, get it all organized throughout the stuff, that's very overwhelming. Whether or not you have executive dysfunction, like that's super overwhelming. But if I come out and say, hey, let's have a cleaning day, we'll go get some pizzas, we'll hang out, we'll get to know each other, and we'll just one step at a time. We'll address the box that's right in front of us, and then we'll get to the thing behind that, and then we'll get to the thing behind that, and we'll do it together. And then, yes, and then I give you permission to let go of the things, or to identify the things that you do need to keep. We've identified, I was out cleaning a wastewater plant last summer, and their construction records, their photos, their good stuff was outside in a maintenance shed. And their library was in with O&M manuals that they have 7 copies of. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
look, here, you're losing the good history, record or not. That's the history. And that's what you have outside covered in all kinds of stuff. Let's bring it in. And again, when they realized not only what they could let go of, but also what we could potentially preserve, and we could do it together, and we'd had fun, and we got to know each other better. Yeah, that made that process so much better. And then that helps them learn how to prioritize. And the next time you have to clean your room, you'll know what steps to take, right?
Right.
I love it. I love it because everyone understands those analogies because most of us have kids and their rooms are a mess. So you have to teach little kids how to clean their rooms and, they don't always want to at first. So thank you so much, Sherry, Kelly, Ashley, for this panel. I'm so grateful you joined us on this. I am going to go to our final slide. We need to do our raffle and also announcement about tomorrow's webinar. So thank you all for joining us today for Navigating RIM in the Utilities and Energy Industries, a panel discussion. Tomorrow, there is also an Iowa presentation, Building and Sustaining Your RIM Program with a RIM Playbook. If you would like to sign up for that, you can go to the ARMA Milwaukee chapter website or also the Iowa chapter website. Lastly, we do have to do the raffle. So the raffle will be for a $50 gift card, again, from VCR. VRC. I knew I was going to say VCR. So, we're doing randomization. Kelly, can you pick a number between 1 and 10, and then we have a thing we're going to do, and then we'll name that person.
Okay, 6.
Shara Strom, are you able to accept a gift card?
I'm so sorry. No, I'm unable to
You're
accept
not?
it.
Okay.
No, thank you though.
That's okay. We know this is a possibility. So, do you want to pick another number, Kelly?
Yes, 4.
Shiana Nielsen, are you able to accept a $50 gift card?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay. So in order to accept it, we just need you to send us your email address. And then after the last webinar on May 29th, it will be mailed out to you.
Do I send it to email to you?
Yeah, you can just send it to me or chat it to me. That's fine. That works.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone. Any final 1-minute thoughts from Sherry, Kelly, or Ashley? We got 3 minutes I see remaining. I just had to get through my admin items. We know they were important. Any final thoughts real quick?
I just want to plug ARMA. I love ARMA. I love the community, the connection, the family of ARMA, and appreciate being a part of this with you guys.
I would just add, oh, go ahead, Ashley.
Also, Ashley, you're on mute again.
Yes, I am. I know I do that. Just hit us up on the ARMA forums if there are any other questions that come up. I think those are a very useful. It's a very useful tool, and one I can't believe that I don't use more. So, but yeah, I'm on there. I'm pretty sure Sherry's on there, probably Kelly too. So please, yeah, post questions.
And I was just going to add, find other people in your industry. So for some of us that are, I am the records department. And, when I go to my local chapter of ARMA, which is great, I run into not only other people in local government, but I also have people that are specifically in river authorities or water districts. So having that network that is very specific to your industry, whether it's within your state or within the country, that, I know I have a network of people that I can reach out to and say, hey, I have no idea what to call this. What do you guys call it? And then, we find some, you have those good resources around. So reach out.
That's a great point. We're a community and we're here to help each other and support each other. Reach out, ask us questions, ask your friends questions, ask other people in ARMA questions, use the chat boards. I know there's a utility board very specific for these types of questions. So thank you all again for attending. We really appreciate it. Thank you on behalf of ARMA Keystone chapter and the Milwaukee Spring Seminar Mania. And have a wonderful rest of everyone's day, whether it's the morning. I know we have people from all over the country, so morning or afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, and we will chat with you all soon. Thank you.